would you introduce yourself?
I'm actually going to let Angela Sherman give us the announcement. She just joined us.
Yeah, welcome. Great. Okay, good. Well, I hope everybody's had the chance to, over the weekend, recover from that very dismal play by the Ravens. Not that that's the biggest part of what we do, but it always is an aggravation when you're expecting something different and you see that, you're going, oh man, you know, it's got to get better. Let's just jump right in. Do I have a motion for a review of the minutes? Approval of the minutes?
Motion we can approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
How about a second if we don't get the first one?
Brad made the motion.
21st.
Seconded it.
Joe, I couldn't hear you.
Says I'm off mute. Can you hear me now? Okay, so Brad made the motion and I seconded it.
Okay, great. Are there any edits, changes, additions, or deletions? Seeing none, let's call a vote. All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Great. Okay, let's go ahead, Emily, about the transfer regulations.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate everyone's time. We convened kind of a mini work group, if you will, of segmental representatives.
Can we pause for a second?
Oh,
There's a
yep.
big echo going on.
Is it me? Is it gone?
Yeah, I think it's gone now. Okay.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. As you may know, we pulled together kind of a mini work group of segmental representatives to work through new regulations around the Transfer with Success Act. As a reminder, the Transfer with Success Act does two things. It creates a mechanism for which receiving institutions are supposed to communicate back to sending institutions when there's denial of credit. So it kind of creates a new mechanism and requirement for communication between sending and receiving institutions, and a new data collection. In the process of revising our regulations for the Transfer with Success Act, we realized a reorganization is long overdue with some minor but still substantive changes and clarifications around some of the terminology that is currently used in our current set of regulations. So we've done a bit of reorganization and reclarification on some of those issues. However, most of the issues around transfer, things like credit for prior learning, gen ed, how do gen ed courses transfer, all of that really is already in regulation, but it is buried and it's hard to find and it doesn't necessarily follow a logical flow. So that's part of the reorganization and again, a cleanup of language. We were hoping to be able to put this forward before the commission this upcoming Wednesday. But after a review from legal, there are just some outstanding questions that I think I know the answers to, but I want to get this right the first time, and I want to take it back to the work group and make sure it really does represent internal processes at the campuses. So for example, we often use the term the institution shall, and it's probably better in this instance to be a little bit more specific about who at the institution. Is it the registrar? Is it the transfer coordinator? Is it the department chair, the provost? So I want to take those things back to the work group and really just dot our I's and cross our T's to make sure we get it right. So we're looking at timelines to see. What I'm hoping we don't get hung up in is the AELR, as most of you know, will often go quiet at the beginning of legislative session so that they can do their thing, which then means a delay of getting proposed regulations through the pipeline. So trying to be thoughtful about that so we can get it through. However, despite all those timelines, things to look forward to once we get these regulations before the commission. We will then send out guidance to the campuses to say, hey, we're revising these regulations. We have the Transfer with Success Act. This is how, as campuses, you need to start getting your act together and getting things moving and shaking. We will likely put out quite a big guidebook on transfer and what campuses should already be doing, as well as what is forthcoming with this Transfer with Success Act implementation. So guidance is forthcoming, and my ideal is that we get that out before the calendar year, certainly before legislative session starts in January. The second piece of guidance will be on the data collection, which we really need to engage with our IR folks and to some extent the registrars on the campus as well. Again, to make sure we get it right. We don't have to report this annual collection to anyone, so there's no further reporting to the General Assembly, as sometimes we have with other reporting requirements. But there is still an expectation that MHEC will do something with this denial of credit reporting that will come to the agency. So we want to be thoughtful about that process and manage capacity on the campuses to do this collection over the next year or two to really scale it up to be a student level collection. So know that that's all forthcoming. Again, I share my appreciation to the work group members. A couple of them are on the call today. This has been a really helpful conversations, and I think this is going to clarify a lot of issues around transfer. It's not going to solve all the problems, but I think it will clean up a lot of what campuses are facing and the challenges that students face. And I'll stop there.
Good. Thank you. Before I call on Brad for his input regarding the meeting with the Lieutenant Governor, where we talked some about the transfer, I wanted to see if anyone had any questions for Emily. Okay, Brad, I think that was a fruitful conversation with the Lieutenant Governor, but I wanted to turn it to you to get your input on the work group.
Yeah, no, well, I think one of the things, Mr. Secretary, is the work group that Emily has put together has really, I think, taken to every segment's issues and concerns regarding how to do this, even down to how a student will notify the sending institution, will notify the receiving institution, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's been a lot of good, fruitful conversation, which has probably caused a little bit of the delays Emily's continuing to have as we get into this, trying to do it the right way. And I think we're laying down the framework for a very successful transfer system. And I think it was great to be able to have the Lieutenant Governor in the room and to hear that conversation from the presidents and their issues around transfer. Still wanting students who graduate with an associate's degree to be junior status once they arrive at a four-year institution. And I think that was heard at that particular meeting that we had. So again, just thanking you and the Lieutenant Governor for the opportunity to have the conversation.
Yep, thank you. And just for a little bit of background for the group, at one of the cabinet meetings, I was talking to the Lieutenant Governor after the meeting, and he said he'd been at a conference where the conversation centered on excessive credits that students were taking at the community colleges and losing in transfer. And that's what led to then a further conversation with the community colleges. So it's really a good ongoing conversation as we move forward. Any questions, any comments? Anyone else? We'll move on to provide a little bit of an update on the Department of Legislative Services RFP consultant. I think all of you know by looking at their website, which is all transparent, that the RFP, any of the respondents had to have their submittals by October the 28th. The intent and target date for letting the contract is November 22nd. So until that time, we really don't have any more other than to refer to DLS. I got that question quite a few times. So we're waiting to see. Within MHEC, we're trying to anticipate some of the questions that we believe the consultants should ask, whether they do or don't, in terms of number of programs under review, number of objections, reasons for objections, and process it. So you've seen us put together, which I think has been shared with everyone, the actual process that we use so that we'll be better prepared and hopefully we can move the consultants report as fast as they're ready. Any questions on that? Any insight anybody has? It's a quiet group this morning, which is fine. Okay. Jeff, let me turn it over to you. The question we had was regarding the federal relief funds, the unspent incoming for higher ed institutions. You're muted, Jeff.
And I think this was a question from Mikua, so I just wanted to try to find out what you were interested in.
I am sitting in for Sarah today, and I apologize that I can't give you any more detail about the question.
Okay. All right, well, why don't
Jeff?
yes, Brad?
My main question I would have with any of these federal funding or funds that went through the state to the institution through your office, is the final deadline, or has there been any extensions offered through DBM or MHEC to make certain that we have an opportunity to spend all the funds?
Okay. Let me follow up on that. I'll get you all the deadlines. And I can get you the balances by college and the deadlines, and we can go from there. How's that sound? All right.
And Jeff, on that, to make sure it includes gear as well as relief.
Yeah, gear 1, gear 2, and the recovery now.
That would be very helpful, and I wonder if, I don't know whether you plan to send that directly to the institutions, but if you could send us a copy of that at system.
The only money that came through MHEC was for community colleges and the independent institutions.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right, I'll get that together and get that out to you.
I'm sorry, can I follow up with that? When you say you, are you also including the Mikua?
Mikua and Mac.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Wonderful, thank you. And Secretary, will all the information be posted on the website? Is that how we're supposed to be tracking everything that's happening in the DLS program approval study? And are you still struggling to hear me?
That's DLS program approval you're looking at? You're talking about?
So let me try to take a stab at
Yes.
that. And Secretary,
Yes.
correct me
Sorry,
if I'm wrong. They're still going through the procurement process for the DLS consultant. As we understand it, we as an agency have not been involved in that process. As soon as the consultant is identified, I would imagine that they'll be reaching out to us, MHEC, as an agency to probably set up an initial meeting, and we'll certainly keep segments informed as that progresses. So I think to Secretary's point, the call for the procurement process to identify a consultant is up on DLS's website, but I believe that's the only information that is out there around this process.
Okay,
I
any
hope
other
that answers your
questions?
question, and Secretary, correct me if I'm wrong, or Jennifer.
No, I think that's accurate. It reflects that the target date was November the 22nd. It doesn't mean that it'll be completed by then, depending on what DLS is doing. So, and like I said, we anticipate being ready to try to answer questions as soon as they arise. And I do expect by reviewing the RFP that some of the institutions will get questions too.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good. Well, I know we have Dr. Wilson has now joined us. He just finished up the GBC webinar, which I was listening to, which is good. Okay, let's move on to this question from Mikio about the state budget surpluses and potential allocations. And Jeff, you want to answer that? You're on mute, Jeff.
This is the state budget surpluses and potential allocations.
Yes.
So right now, the budget's being considered. Agencies are having hearings and meetings with DBM for them to start putting the budget together. And all of this is done under executive privilege. So I'm not sure what this question was regarding and what can be discussed. I think this was another question from Mikiwa as well.
It was the question from Nikiwa. And I think perhaps it was just in response to, at our president's workshop, the amount of funding that was available in the budget, and just some questions as to what it might be used for. But certainly I understand if that's not information that can be shared at this time.
Right.
Well, also, I don't believe the decisions have been made, even in advance of doing that.
Yeah, the governor and DBM will be making decisions through the end of December, and then that'll be introduced in the budget bill, the second week of session, I believe.
Dr. Wilson?
Yeah, I have a question of Jeff. Do you know if higher ed is under consideration for the $2.4 billion surplus?
I would think, I don't know exactly what is being considered, because that's executive privilege, but I would think that higher ed would be, if you look at the past record of funding, it would be considered for that.
Yes, as we know, both the governor and the legislature puts tremendous amount of faith and as an investment in higher ed for continuing to support the economic response. So it's again, it's very top of the agenda, and we'll continue to push and support that. I don't have any numbers. I mean, if everybody wants me to make up numbers, it's not going to work. I can't even win the Powerball. So yeah, stay tuned is the best I could say. Any other questions? Okay, then the last on our agenda is any kind of member updates. Any institution have any updates? I think I learned this morning that Bowie's football team won the championship, which is tremendous. And so for the CIAA football championship. So that's a good news, and that'll be spread and pushed around, which is good.
Maryland's field hockey team is going to the Final Four.
Okay, Joe, and then Dr. Wilson, Dr. Phillips.
I'll give two other very brief kudos, if you will. In the All-in Democracy Challenge nationwide, a College Park student, in fact, won the national award for leadership in the All-in Challenge for her leadership at College Park with their All-in Democracy Challenge, and Towson tied for the #1 institution in the country on their plan to incorporate civic education and issues around democracy. So those are my 2 points of pride. But one question that we can come back to at the end is, do we have any more insight as to the date that the state plan might come forward, and or, I'm sorry, Emily, or if we can at least look forward to an extension of time or a reasonable time post approval of the state plan, that we would have to have our mission statements in, because now we're clashing up against those deadlines, and we'd just like some clarity.
Absolutely. So we are super close to at least having a good solid draft out for public comment. I wouldn't want to finalize the state plan without putting it out for public comment. What I can do is I will certainly after this meeting share with the segment the outline that we're working off of. It's what I had shared with the commission months ago, but it gives kind of the highlights of the different strategies and priorities that we're laying out in the state plan. It's honestly not that different from the last state plan. It still holds the 3 goals: access, success, and innovation. However, to your question, Joe, around mission statements. So for the public entities that are on this call, as you may be aware, after the state plan is approved, there is a review conducted of mission statements of institutions to ensure that it aligns with the state plan and the priorities in the state plan. So we won't commence that until the state plan is approved. So if you do have institutions that are already, as part of their internal strategic planning, that are doing mission statement updates, I will make sure to give you the general outline of the state plan with the priorities so that they can be sure that they align. I'm not too concerned about that. I think really in the mission review, the things that we're looking for is concrete evidence that institutions are being thoughtful about how they identify in light of kind of these larger, broader goals around access, success, and innovation. So I'll certainly give you, I'll send that out to the full group so that everybody has that outline.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And part of this is that the system is putting its strategic plan together. And what I'm trying to get is a reasonable timeline for our campuses to know what they're going to be able to or be responsible to be responsive to, which plans and so on, recognizing that the state plan is not radically different than it was before. So I think we're okay, but the question arose, I promised I'd ask.
Sure. I think realistically, we wouldn't touch the mission review process until after, certainly after legislative session. And at best, we would put out a call at the beginning of the summer after the spring semester. So I think we can commit to that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, David, I know you had your hand up for a question.
Yes, actually, I jumped on the call a little bit late, so I'm not sure if Provost Yu was officially introduced, but if not, let me take this opportunity to introduce Provost Untitled Yu, who is our Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs here at Morgan. Our former Provost went on to a college presidency in Texas, and Dean Yu has been with us for almost 6 years. I recruited him about 5 years ago from Jackson State University, where he was chair of the chemistry department. Was there for 19 years, led that chemistry department to the top 50 chemistry departments in the United States, and has been with us and has increased significantly the grants coming into our School of Computer, Mathematical, and Natural Sciences as dean. He has brought in close to $50 million over the last 5 years. And so just wanted to make sure that Secretary Fielder and other members of the higher ed segmental group that you knew that Dr. Yu is our new Provost and Senior VP for Academic Affairs.
Yes, we're aware of it, and I think you should have gotten our congratulations letter a month ago or so, which is great. So welcome to the segmental meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to take this chance, if I may, to thank Dr. Wilson and Morgan State to put the trust in me. And I'm excited to be here, to be with the colleagues on this panel, to work with you. I think this is a kind of update, some new things. I may want to just take this chance to say very briefly. So we have a record freshman enrollment. So I just want to say to the colleagues that we're so proud for this year. We have a record freshman enrollment. We have about 23 plus freshmen, 2,300 plus freshmen versus about 1,300 last year.
Dr. Yu, welcome, and we look forward to your input on many different subjects that come before us. I know we haven't spent any time today talking about that wonderful thing called COVID. You know, at the bottom of the agenda, you see it says our next meeting is January 10th, 2021. I have no interest in repeating 2020 or 2021 with all these other aggravations that we've been dealing with. So do know that the next meeting is January 10th, 2022. Any other reports in? Jeff, from Dr. Bird from St. Mary's.
Just wanted to mention, since we were talking about Bowie State, our sailor Leo Boucher won the single-handed championship last weekend as the best sailor in the country, and actually will be representing the USA in the Junior Pan Am Games starting next week down in Brazil. So it's exciting. He's phenomenal sailor.
That's excellent, and I would be remiss if I didn't encourage each of you to send these kind of highlights to us so we can put them on our website. Kind of a, you know, this is what's going on throughout the whole system, throughout the state. Brad?
Yeah, just really quickly, let you know that we have a new president coming on board at Howard Community College on January 10th, Dr. Daria Willis, who is the current president of Everett Community College in Washington State. She is an up-and-coming person within the community college leadership. I mean, she's under 40 and she's already been president of 2 institutions, or will be. So we're looking forward to having her join us. And the other issue that I've spoken with Emily about, and I've reached out to the commissioner at Labor who oversees our OSHA state plan, is the impact of the OSHA ETS on our institutions who do not have mask mandates. I can't talk. And I was just wondering, Angela or Hernande, or even Jeffrey, if this is something that, you know, you've had to look into as well as the impact of that. I know there's a stay on it from Louisiana and the timeline is a little bit murky, but if we're supposed to have everybody vaccinated by January 5th with a month in between shots, it's going to practically be impossible. So I didn't know if any of your institutions would have been impacted by that as well. Seeing muted mics, I guess it's our issue.
I can't speak to that. I know that a number of our institutions have high vaccination rates, but I don't know what they're going to do related to the mandate.
Brad, can you share who you've been in contact with at Labor, and maybe we can get them to join us on our Thursday call?
Yes, I will. I can. It's give me 1 second, Commissioner.
Aaron Roth or Jim Ripkowski?
No, I talked to Aaron Roth about it. It was the actual commissioner that oversees Hilmaniak. If you've heard of him before, he's the person I reached out to.
Okay, we'll reach out and see if we can have them join us on Thursday to provide a little bit more guidance.
The only thing I would add to that is I thought there was a federal court that did a permanent ban, but we're still following it. We don't have an answer on it. It's not firm. But Brad, I do appreciate you bringing that up because we are uncertain of how it truly impacts NICUA, but we are monitoring. So if there's someone that's going to be brought on the call, that would be great. But it's still uncertainty land on our end.
Go ahead, Joe.
For clarification, when the USM put the vaccination mandate in place last April, we in fact did not anticipate the length of the pandemic, if you will, and we worded our original mandate as it applied to the fall semester. So as of Friday, we went back to our Board of Regents to get their concurrence. It was proposed by the Chancellor with the support of our 12 presidents that we extend that mandate for the winter and spring terms, so through the spring of 2022, just for clarification. So if there are new students arriving for winter or spring terms, they would be expected to comply with the vaccine mandate, and any new employees that are being onboarded are expected to comply also. Just thought I would give you that clarification. So that's where we are, and we've done some surveys of students, and at this point, our students are saying keep the mask mandate for indoors in place. We don't like it, but we don't want to suffer from whiplash. And they are now engaged enough in understanding that it's working, so that in fact, I think our college campuses in the state of Maryland are among the safest places to be. And we're very proud of that. But I was really proud of the students saying, as much as we hate it, we'll continue to wear masks for a while. Don't take that away and then put it back in place.
Okay, so I have a quick question. How are the other sectors thinking about boosters? Is anyone thinking about that yet?
Yes, we've done a lot of discussion about that. We do not think we are going to be mandating boosters in any way. We are putting out messaging encouraging people to get boosters as they become available. And those health centers on our larger campuses that can handle it, in fact, are giving boosters. But because they are generally available enough around the state, we don't see the need to pivot and have mass booster sites, if you will, on the campuses. The other thing along that line that we are doing is, in fact, putting out a lot of messaging encouraging flu shots as well.
I can add to that, Dr. Wilson, that at the state level, the Department of Health is not planning on having mobile boosters or max booster sites, just so everyone's aware of that. And I think the expectation is as individuals, you know, at your local pharmacy, local doctors, those kind of things.
The other thing, Dr. Wilson, that I will say is that our panels of experts are already starting to, I'm going to say discuss. In some respects, we're setting ourselves up for some internal debate as we make this turn from pandemic to coronavirus being endemic. We're already asking ourselves, what are we going to do for next year? And are we going to add COVID either boosters or vaccines on top of the other required vaccines that we have for at least our students? And would this be the first time that we consider any mandate for a vaccination for faculty and staff? We have not made any decisions yet, but we're already beginning to ask ourselves these questions. We know the data will be rolling in. We don't expect to be making these decisions until early to middle spring, but we're already talking about it.
Any other questions anyone wants to raise? Well, thank you all for attendance. I really, again, congratulate each of you for your leadership during this pandemic. And so it's got you doing the normal operating, looking at the strategic, and then you've got the COVID added on top of it. And as Joe already pointed out, higher ed is not only one of the safest places to be, it's one of the best leadership places to be. So with that, we'll conclude. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor, say aye. Take care. We'll talk again. Call me anytime. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.